Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to vlog 190. How to select a supervisor. This request comes from the terribly glamorously named Mona Lisa. I'm really hoping that Mona Lisa is his, her or their real name, living the dream. But this vlog I think was a great request, and part of what Mona Lisa was after, she's about to start her PhD and she wanted to know what to look for in a supervisor. So for those of you that are about to start or thinking about starting a PhD in the new year, what are you going to look for in a PhD supervisor? So I'm going to answer that. But there are two other audiences for this vlog as well. As we know, 40% of students change one or more of their supervisors, advisors on the way through their PhD journey. So for 40% of you, you're going to have to think about again what you're going to require from a great supervisor. And remember, students leave supervisors, supervisors also leave students. Some really bad stuff happens at that point of cessation or ending. So there's some healing involved, as well as regrouping and saying, right, well, what do I need now? And the third group are those wonderful students who are about to finish. Hi. Congratulations. And you're questioning your future, your professional future, your academic future, and you're asking yourself, what sort of supervisor will I be? What sort of supervisor will I become? So those three audiences I think are really important. And yes, I've written a lot on PhD supervision, a lot of refereed articles that are out there, also a lot of articles for the Times Higher Education. So if you're interested in my sort of bigger picture stuff about PhD supervision, please put Tara Brabazon PhD supervision into Google and you'll find the refereed research, but you'll also find my journalistic pieces. Today is different. Today is really different because I wanted to really explore supervision with the deep contemporary contextualization. I want to look at what is happening in this field in the last 2 years in particular, while bearing in mind those three audiences. Those of you that are about to start and wanting a supervisor, what are you looking for? Those that are in a bit of a desperate situation and needing to change supervisors. And thirdly, those of you that are wondering, who will I become? What sort of supervisor will I be? Thinking of everything I've gone through, how can I be better for the system, for our universities, for the world? Okay, and can I say, much to my amusement, I receive so much hate from supervisors, advisors when I do vlogs like this, when I write about this, and I love that. No problem. Love a bit of hate mail. So I always get hate mail from supervisors after gigs like this. My favourite comes from a young guy in Canada who wrote me what I call a War and Peace email. So he really went for it page after page after page. And he was disgusted, yes, disgusted, that I would be instructing students what to look for in a supervisor advisor because it hurts his chance to get tenure because he wants as many PhD students as he can and he doesn't want them to know that there are choices available. Bless. Then there's also, again, one of my favourite abusive moments came from an older supervisor, male, from the hard sciences. Bless. And he was offended, and yes, really offended, riled up, really only like all white guys can get riled up. And he was really riled up that I was instructing students to have a look at the CVs of their prospective supervisors, advisors, and look at the number of students completed, the length of time it took to complete those students, and yes, have a look at the authorship of their articles. Offended, wow. Now, I do all of this work for you and in my research more generally, because you as a PhD student, you have choices. And you need the information that is best for you to make those choices. So what I'm going to do, you can absolutely disagree with me. As always, I present these ideas and you might go, that's rubbish, Tara. That's great, knock yourself out. But I'm presenting some strategies and some structures for you to work yourself out. What is a good supervisor for you now, for you in the future, and what sort of supervisor will you become? Okay, point one. Probably the most important one, and I've never started here before. This was the new bit of this vlog in particular this week. The first component when you're thinking about supervision is What do you want from a supervisor? And be really clear. So are you wanting collegial conversations about ideas? Are you wanting co-creation methodologies? Are you wanting to be directed in the reading that you need to do, so a content expert? And are you clear about what you want from the PhD experience in terms of teaching experiences, in terms of administrative experiences, and yes, publishing? So before you can match with another human, match with their topic, match with their expectations, you have to work out your own. And I think students very rarely start here. So what do you want to achieve from that supervisor-advisory relationship? It may be about employability, so you need someone to get you a job. That's the whole thing, knock yourself out. You need someone to help you with areas that you find challenging, perhaps say research design or expertise in more than one discipline. So for post-disciplinary theses, they are tough to supervise, and you need a really great human being to supervise those theses. But you also might be after someone helping you learn how to teach. So you have to be clear on your needs, your expectations, and discuss overtly your expectations and assumptions with prospective supervisors and advisors. So basically, team, work yourself out before you go beyond yourself and talk to others. So what's important to you? 2, is your supervisor advisor a decent person? So much of the conversation in the research literature focuses on the seniority of the supervisor, or indeed, the focus on publications, getting your publications through, or indeed content expertise. So the literature really focuses on that. But for me, the first and the most important consideration when you are thinking of selecting a supervisor is this person a decent, ethical human? The stories that I've heard and indeed experienced in the last 30 years of working in universities would chill your soul. Profound sexual harassment, makes me upset, but profound sexual harassment, the bending of personal and professional boundaries, excluding students from publications, neglect, and abuse. So the first step after you've worked through your expectations of supervision is to check out what sort of person your supervisor actually is. Check out Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. Do a Google search. We've never had more information on more people than we do right now. So there'll be plenty of stuff about your supervisor that is available. So you'll be able to have a good look and get a sense of what sort of person he or she is. So check the CV in terms of authorship in particular. That's significant. But check out, more importantly, if they have integrity, if they're stable, if they're professional, but also if they're compassionate and caring. And as I get older and everything I've seen in supervision, I've realised that, at the end of the day, with all the stuff about leadership and blah, 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 compassion and care is the most important variable for us to be thinking about. Compassion, care. 3, talk with current students. Now, this is an important one. Yes, it's important to interview, to talk with your prospective supervisor. You need to talk with them. You need to have a Skype meeting. You need to get on the phone. You need to communicate. But the most valuable information that you're going to receive about that prospective supervisor is from their current and past students. Most academics list their previous students or their current students on a website somewhere, or it's listed in their university system. And if not, you can probably track down those previous students through authorship matters on their publications. So talk with those students, send them an email, Most students are very happy to share their experiences, good or ill, with you. And I've always said students don't advise other students nearly enough. That's why in the podcasts that we release from the Office of Graduate Research so frequently, those podcasts are the voices of students. So you can hear the voices of students and learn from their experiences so they can contextualise your own. So learn from other students. Find out what the supervisor would be like from their previous students. 4, beware the senior academic in a leadership role. Now, I'm speaking about this one from personal experience. This is me, and this is hundreds of great scholars around the world who are scholars, research active, teach, but also have a leadership role, right? Now, one of the great advantages of selecting a teaching and research academic without the leadership stuff as your supervisor is that they can help you teach, so they'll be able to get you casual work in their courses, and also as they're producing research, you can be part of that journey, part of that production. And I think I had 18 PhD students completed before I was 30, and it was an engine room. My supervision was just fantastic. They all taught. They all were involved in publications. It was simply brilliant and exciting. So you'll never ever hear me say, oh yes, go for the older experienced academic. Actually, if you find a great match with someone who's 30, whatever your age is, do that, because there's some fantastic experiences to be gained there. But also the advantage of that teaching and research academic is they are available. Yes, they'll have lectures and tutorials and some meetings and so forth, but they have a level of flexibility that people like me don't have. You see, senior people like me do supervise, and actually I have more PhD students today than I have at any other point in my life. So that's great, and I meet with them weekly, and they're on my schedule, and there's my calendar, and there are all my students in half-an-hour meetings, bang, bang, bang. But the problem is as follows. Yes, there are weekly meetings, but I have to handle a situation almost on a daily basis at very short notice. So you notice I record these vlogs at 7:30 on Friday mornings often, and you notice I haven't switched my computer on yet. The reason I haven't switched my computer on yet is there will be several traumas waiting for me behind that darkened screen, and I needed to talk with you first before I handle that. But the nature of this job is, it's 7:30, by 8:15 something very serious is going to happen, and basically the day might be completely wiped away, or in some cases something so serious occurs that the week goes away. So I try and be consistent, see my students weekly, but the nature of this job is chaotic things occur. So at 9:15, something happens, the day is gone. So that's not great for students. So just be aware when you're selecting someone with a leadership role, there are added challenges to that. There are great advantages too, so if you're Tara Brabazon's PhD student, that's a great thing, and that will get you work, and that's nice, and that's fantastic. And that might be important to you. But if guaranteeing that I'm going to be able to see you every Tuesday morning at 11:30, I try and do that, and I will almost always be able to do it 95% of the time, but every now and again I'm going to be called out of the office very quickly, and there's nothing I can do about that. Okay, so go into the situation with your eyes open. If you want a senior academic with a leadership role, there are costs of that selection. 5, look at the publication list of your prospective supervisor advisor. Publications matter in ways that you may not even begin to imagine. This is an important one, and by the way, I'm not advantaging the older, more experienced supervisors, by the way. In fact, yes, there's the long career and the long amount of publications, that's great. I always focus very strongly on the last 5 years. So look at the last 5 years. Are they still an engine room? Are they still producing interesting work? Read it. Do you still respect it? And that's why early career researchers that are absolutely at the edge of their discipline and having a great time, and they're publishing machines, don't discount those scholars. Feel very comfortable and confident going to those scholars. So, if you're finding that early career researcher that's going places, you become one of their first PhD students, winning. But also, what I need you to do when you're looking at the publication list is look at how students are being used. And I'm using the word use pretty aggressively. When you're talking with those PhD students from the supervisor you're considering, ask them about authorship and that supervisor, how authorship is managed, how the ownership of ideas, how that's managed with transparency. Authorship in doctoral education is a huge issue. On a daily basis, we see supervisory relationships smashed apart because of authorship. So if you can predict a problem, if you think something dodgy is occurring with authorship in that supervisor, if you can predict that problem, walk away from that problem and make a different selection. 6, pick a supervisor who can enable your publishing career. Great supervisors know people, lots of people. They know book editors, they know publishers, they know journal editors. We know people. We know people. It's fantastic. People, stuff, great, brilliant, wonderful. So depending on your discipline, a great supervisor can get you a book deal. A great supervisor can introduce you to editors, know where the edgy journals are, not just simply, the tier 1 journals. Anyone can do that, go to a database and, there's the journals, okay, publish there. Anybody can do that. But a great supervisor knows the really edgy journals, the journals that all the important people, the edgy scholars on the planet are reading and publishing in. That's really interesting information. So importantly, go for those supervisors that really understand and know publishing as an industry. So yes, you need a PhD supervisor to get you through a PhD, but a great supervisor will be with you for 20 or 30 years, and that publishing momentum will never go away. So never underestimate understanding of the publishing industries. 7, pick a supervisor who will write you a reliable reference. Students always underestimate the value of a supervisory reference. We all focus on the finishing of the PhD, the writing of articles, but most importantly, you are going to need a reliable reference throughout your entire academic career. Now, as I discussed at the start of this vlog, you need to select a decent, ethical, compassionate human being as your supervisor, and that's really, full stop, because that decent, ethical, compassionate person will write you good references for the rest of your life, and that will get you jobs, get you consultancies, get you entries into some of the best research environments in the world. So when students behave dreadfully to ethical and compassionate supervisors, and I see that on a daily basis too, really decent, ethical supervisors, and the students just treat them disgracefully. I just don't think the students are realising they're throwing away a referee for the next 30 years. And the value of a referee for 30 years, you're just not going to be able to calculate. Now, I've only, freaked out and, basically walked away from a student twice in my career. I finished their PhD, can I say, I finished them. But I couldn't progress with them because of their behaviour, and therefore I won't write them references. Only 2 in my career. The first one, I was questioning my own physical safety. So the student was a bit of a stalker. When I say a bit of a stalker. So I just went for my own safety. Look, can you please never contact me again? Got the thesis through, that's great, but please don't contact me again. And another student, after completion, wrote me the most extraordinary emails after the death of Steve. And it was absolutely diabolical. It was inhuman. It was actually inhuman. And I thought, and I just felt shredded like a human being. And I thought, I can't be around a person like that, and I can't recommend that person, a person that would do that to another human being. And so I said, never contact me again. So supervisors put up with a lot, but at a certain point I can't recommend a person because I'm either frightened of them or I'm disgusted. And when you start to get a supervisor feeling disgust or hatred or fear, then you've thrown away a reference. So just manage the supervisor as referee. 8, does your prospective supervisor know what they're doing? Always remember that the majority of PhD supervisors, nay, the majority of university academics, have absolutely no teaching qualifications. So they've absolutely no idea what they're doing beyond their experience in a classroom, okay? And that means, therefore, they supervise as they were supervised. And that's why you've always seen me roll my eyes, and I hear this once an hour, where someone comes in, a supervisor comes in and says, when I did my PhD, ... What follows that ... is nonsense. When I did my PhD, blah, blah, blah. That's a data set of one. Now, where else in research life do we take a data set of one, your experience of supervision, and generalize it to anything else? Okay, so you learn a great deal about a supervisor by the professional development that they undertake, because the world has changed. Do they believe in learning? Do they believe in your learning? Isn't it funny that we've got an academic in a university, a learning institution, and they don't do any learning? They don't do any professional development. This just seems bonkers to me. They assume that they know how to supervise because they were supervised, okay? Or they assume, right, well, I've had supervisory completions, so therefore I know how to supervise. And of course, you look at who they've supervised, and they're all young white men and women. They're all under the age of 25. They're all one group that are like their earlier selves. So, and for me, that's horrifying, because it suggests they're not engaging with Indigenous students, they're not engaging with students of colour, older students, the great diversity. They're not going there, they're simply replicating who they were through other supervisors. Now, I always say supervising PhD students is a privilege. It is a privilege, and it needs to be earned by continuing professional development, continuing to learn how to supervise. I do it myself. So really ask yourself, do you want a supervisor who walks away from lifelong learning, who walks away from professional development, that they've just simply disconnected from the changing understandings of doctoral education around the world? They're not interested in that, just their data set of one, their lab, that's what they're interested in, and the international transformations of andragogy are not their concern. Okay, so if they think they know everything because of their own personal experiences, then you might like to think about whether or not you want to be supervised by them and the consequences of that. 9, linking from the last one, attention to diversity. One of the greatest problems that exists in doctoral supervision is homology. The assumption that we supervise as we were supervised. So this perpetuates particular practices and assumptions. So where these practices and assumptions come from is from the young men in the hard sciences, okay? So the people that were young men in the hard sciences go on to train other young men in the hard sciences in the lab-based environment. And that's great. There are wonderful young men and fantastic women in the lab-based sciences. I adore you all, you know that. But the point is, that's an absolute minority of enrolments around the world, an international minority of enrolments. So all our systems, all our assumptions, all our protocols for the rest of the students are based on this slither of a very, very small sociology of who our students are. See the problem? So this group is the minority of PhD students. So therefore, what happens to Indigenous students, students of colour, women, older students, students with impairments and disabilities, but also our gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, non-binary identifying students? What happens to those students? And of course, they're the majority of the human beings that we will supervise. So you need to, if you're from those groups, which is of course the majority, if you're from those groups, then you need to select a supervisor who transcends their own experience. Because it's not about who they are, it's about how they serve and supervise you as the whole person, right? So if they have the privilege of supervising you, they have to move beyond their personal life choice and experiences. They must know how to decolonise the doctorate. They have to have an understanding of post-colonialism. So, the role of universities and doctoral programs in the ongoing colonisation of citizens around the world. So how do we decolonise the doctorate to stop that now? So when we have the privilege of supervising Indigenous students, we supervise them in a way that is decolonising and creating spaces. Yep. But we also have to understand we've got a whole great diversity of our students with impairments and disabilities. Can your supervisor work with the Disability Action Plan? Do they understand and organise a day and structure a day in and around particular impairments and movement strategies and structures? Yep. And also, and this is a big one for me, and I'm doing a lot of professional development myself on this at the moment, how we supervise and work with our non-heterosexual students. Okay, now about a third of my PhD students have been gay and lesbian, and that's been a privilege, wonderful human beings, and so I did a lot of professional development there, and of course I do a lot of work in the area of sexuality and education. That's great, so they've been great students. I have yet to supervise a transgender student or a non-binary identifying student, so I would desperately welcome those students on our campuses, and therefore I'm currently conducting, for me, research and professional development. So when I have the privilege of those students coming into my office, I am andragogically ready to support and care for them. Tell you what, as you know, a lot of you know, my late husband, Professor Steve Redhead, supervised who we think is the first transgender PhD student in the world. And Steve always used to remind me that this remarkable man would have excrement put through his mailbox, you know, the English door, so the mailbox was in the door, excrement put through his door, and his family were abused on the street. So we can pretend that sort of stuff doesn't happen. We can just bring a student in their office and do our meeting and they can leave. But if you're confronting transphobia, homophobia, if you're confronting racism on a daily, grinding basis, ableism on a grinding, daily basis, and that's going to impact how you're supervised and the sort of experience you're going to have through your PhD. So you require a supervisor that respects you, respects your journey, listens, and is able to move and shift their supervision to your needs. So select carefully. Experience will not be enough for you. They have to understand you. They have to respect you and understand on a daily basis what you're living with outside of their office before they see you. 10. Inspiration matters. Now, most of you know sort of inspiration and motivation and stuff. It's all a bit Oprah for me. But look, you won't finish a PhD without them. If a supervisor can inspire you, then you will finish. Any academic can sort of guide you, can say, oh look, do this, do that. Yeah, they can guide you, they can get you through. Anyone can do that. But you need a little bit more to finish. As I've often said, you've heard me say it, anyone can supervise. Supervising a student to completion, that's the gift. Inspiration ensures that when you have a dreadful day, that supervisor knows how to get you out and beyond that dreadful day. So when a student is absolutely at their lowest, often about the 2 weeks before they're submitting, a great supervisor can revision you, can show you the future that you're yet to see. So you can see, this is what will happen when the thesis is completed. These are the publications that are coming from it. This is your future self. Come on, hang on. This is inspiration, and a great inspirational supervisor can get you through that diabolical day when you just wanted to chuck the whole thing away. So a supervisor is someone who you can respect, but also they will continue to care when you've stopped caring. They will hold on to you and hold on to your project when you just simply want to walk away. Now that's a supervisor. So Mona Lisa, what a grand request that was, and an unusual vlog. I didn't know it was going to end up like this, but it has, and I loved doing the research in and through this remarkable and changing topic. But always remember, you as a student, you are precious, and you have choices. So make a good decision. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.